training for membership of the National Committee Against Torture, organized by advocates. The 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has amended the Anti-Torture Act 2017 and Violence Against Persons. Act 2015 further demonstrates Nigerians' commitment to protect all persons from torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, punishment, and to ensure that persons, irrespective of their circumstances, are treated with utmost dignity. This is in addition to concerted efforts towards preventing torture and providing redress and support to victims. Enjoy the rest of the story.
Promoting the United Nations Convention Against Torture, which is being supported by the Australian High Commission in Nigeria and the United Nations. We've been doing this project since 2017, and we are now here to train members of the NCAT because the NCAT has a strategic role to play in the prevention of torture in Nigeria. So, without wasting much time, we have a lot of activities packed today, and I want to apologize for starting just a little behind schedule. The focus project is promoting the United Nations Convention Against Torture, which is being supported by the Australian High Commission in Nigeria and the United Nations. We've been doing this project since 2017, and we are now here to train members of the NCAT because the NCAT has a strategic role to play in the prevention of torture in Nigeria. So, without wasting much time, we have a lot of activities packed today, and I want to apologize for starting just a little behind schedule. The focus project is promoting the United Nations Convention Against Torture, which is being supported by the Australian High Commission in Nigeria and the United Nations. We've been doing this project since 2017, and we are now here to train members of the NCAT because the NCAT has a strategic role to play in the prevention of torture in Nigeria. So, without wasting much time, we have a lot of activities packed today, and I want to apologize for starting just a little behind schedule. The focus project is promoting the United Nations Convention Against Torture, which is being supported by the Australian High Commission in Nigeria and the United Nations. We've been doing this project since 2017, and we are now here to train members of the NCAT because the NCAT has a strategic role to play in the prevention of torture in Nigeria. So, without wasting much time, we have a lot of activities packed today, and I want to apologize for starting just a little behind schedule.
Various states in the country and on the platform of the ProCat project, which aims at promoting the principles of the United Nations Convention Against Torture in Nigeria. We have worked, we're currently working in 5 states, and cumulatively we have worked across 9 states in the country to support victims of torture through direct legal assistance, but also capacity building efforts, including trainings for security agencies on international, regional, and national human rights framework prohibiting torture. Advocates Sans Frontières France is also pleased to be a member of the National Committee Against Torture and in recognition of its work in torture prevention in the country, but also supporting victims of torture. And most importantly, now pushing for accountability for perpetrators of torture. We all know that torture is prevalent in Nigeria, and we are happy that the National Committee Against Torture is one of the unique bodies, initiative of the Nigerian government to tackle the issue of torture. Amongst its membership, we have government agencies, particularly security agencies, showing the commitment of the government to address the issue of torture by also looking inwards within these various security agencies. We have champions who are members of the committee driving the agenda to eradicate torture, especially at the institutional level. And we at ASF France, we are pleased to be committed to be able to contribute our quota to this effort by building the capacity of the committee. We believe that today's training will contribute to the efficient delivery and discharge of the duties of the National Committee Against Torture in Nigeria. Originally, the committee we know was set up to be the national preventive mechanism, and we have had can ever equate for someone being permanently physically disabled for no just reason and without any form of recourse, any form of justice from the government. The police officer is yet to be arrested, he's yet to be investigated, and he's also yet to be prosecuted to hold perpetrators of torture accountable. And we are happy that
and say welcome to all of the committee members and the chair as well. And so thank you for the kind invitation to provide some opening remarks today at the commencement of your two-day workshop. First, my congratulations to the newly elected members of this second committee, and welcome to this workshop on anti-torture legal drafting, which the Australian Government is proud to support. Members of the committee, I'm sure you are aware that you have a great responsibility ahead of you. The training that you received today, combined with your expertise, your knowledge, your leadership, and your commitment to defending human rights, will pave the way for the drafting of critical regulations, policy guidelines, and implementing rules that will protect people against torture in Nigeria. And critically, it will allow the courts to hear and prosecute proven cases of torture. On behalf of the Australian Government, I urge you to work with the Nigerian Government to put an end to what some perceive as the institutionalised practice of torture, and to brief members of the international community, such as myself, on the outcome of your visits to detention centres, your interviews with detainees, and the progress of the complaints lodged by victims and their progress through the courts. The passage of the Anti-Torture Act 2017 was an important milestone in Nigeria's judicial history. I've read one commentator describe the Act as unsung legislation with far-reaching implications. But 6 years on, Nigeria still lacks the supporting framework to ensure compliance with the clearly articulated expectations and obligations captured in this document. The Act commits Nigeria to adhering fully to the Constitution and international instruments. It is clear also on what is defined as torture, both physical and mental, and provides helpful examples. It is clear on defining perpetrators. It upholds the right of any person to complain that they have suffered torture, and importantly, it upholds the right for a complainant to seek medical assessments and legal assistance from the Human Rights Commission, NGOs, or private persons. And it sets out, briefly, penalties for breaches of the Act and assigns, vaguely, responsibilities for regulatory law enforcement, investigative agencies. Importantly, the Act allows
the General, the Chair, and also the co-chair of the National Committee Against Torture. Thank you very much for those kind words, and I believe that the committee is charged and ready for the work today. And it is my honor to introduce to you the lead trainer for this activity today. I'm very excited to be the one to introduce him. He is someone that I consider to be a mentor, and he's been one of the pillars of the civil society movement on accountability, particularly on this area of torture, and he is none other than Mr. Joseph Ote. He is let's clap for him. He is the founder and executive director of Access to Justice, one of the leading NGOs in Nigeria in the area of access to justice, which they represent. For decades, Mr. Ote has worked strongly to improve the criminal justice sector in Nigeria. He's been one of the leading voices contributing both the academic side and through strategic investigation. He's done an enormous work. He's someone who works mostly behind the scenes, but those of us who recognize competence, we know that he is one of those that have done outstanding work in this space. And we are indeed honored to have him to lead this training. Just to also mention that Access to Justice has been working in partnership with Avocats Sans Frontières France on this issue, and Access to Justice is one of the leading organizations that did the groundwork for the passage of the Anti-Torture Act 2017. We should clap for them for that. So the Anti-Torture Act is mentioned. A lot of people do not know those who did the groundwork. Access to Justice is one of those organizations that did that work to the legislation that we have today. So it is my honor to present Mr. Joseph Ote to you. Session today and also tomorrow on this issue. I believe that he's already here and will join us.
This is because of their official engagement already scheduled. So they have just directed me to present to colleagues these good years, but the words and the voice is coming from me. So permit me to start this remark by welcoming all of you to this two-day capacity building program for members of the National Committee Against Torture. Our sincere appreciation goes to SF for this important initiative. As we are aware, Nigeria has taken legislative, judicial, and other measures to implement the United Nations Convention Against Torture, Cruel, Inhuman, and Degrading Treatment, UNCAT, as well as signatory to the optional protocol to the Convention, UNCAT. The 1990 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has altered the Anti-Torture Act of 2017 and the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, otherwise known as the VAP Act 2015, further demonstrates Nigeria's commitment to protect all persons from torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment, and to ensure that all persons, irrespective of their circumstances, are treated with utmost dignity. This is in line or in addition to concerted effort towards preventing torture and providing redress and support to victims by CSOs and other pressure groups in Nigeria, as is being done this morning by ASF. Also worthy of mention is the fact that the federal government of Nigeria, as part of national mechanisms designed to fulfill Nigerians' obligation under UNCAT, reconstituted the National Committee Against Torture and has designated the National Human Rights Commission as the national preventive mechanism as required by UNCAT. This capacity building program, therefore, for members of UNCAT represents a strategic initiative to fulfill the requirements of Article 18 of UNCAT towards ensuring enhanced capabilities and professional knowledge amongst members of the committee and the members of National Preventive Mechanism. It will create awareness and strengthen understanding among members of the committee on international and regional human rights instruments that relate to torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment, and reinforce its role in the protection and prevention of torture in Nigeria. I am confident that we will apply the knowledge and skills that we acquire to work as members of NCAT by working in collaboration with relevant stakeholders, including law enforcement agencies, judiciary, civil society organizations, and so forth and so on. By doing so, we can ensure a comprehensive and coordinated response to torture and create an environment where accountability and justice will prevail. Let me at this moment seize the opportunity once again to thank members of NCAT for the successful submission of Nigeria's 1922 report to UN Committee Against Torture. we have done very, very well in that regard. So can we clap for ourselves?
However, it's not enough to have an anti-torture legislation. Government needs to do more to ensure that there is implementation of that act. That will go a long way in not only preventing torture but also holding perpetrators to account. We believe very firmly, as I said earlier, that justice for victims of torture would not be enough unless perpetrators are held to account. And even more important is to put in place measures to prevent in the first place, in a proactive measure, the commission of torture by security agencies. And one of the ways to do this is to send a very clear signal that there are consequences for the commission of torture. The Anti-Torture Act prescribes up to 25 years imprisonment for security agencies who indulge in torture. It's been criminalized. So we need to create a lot more awareness so that citizens are aware of their rights. It is illegal to subject anyone to torture, inhuman, degrading treatment or punishment. Torture has been prescribed by law. It has been criminalized by a domestic legislation in Nigeria. It is now up to the government to ensure that it walks the talk by beginning prosecution under this act. So far, we know that there's been zero prosecution under the Anti-Torture Act, and one of the reasons is because the Attorney General of the Federation is yet to issue the implementing guidelines for this act. And today we are here because Avocasa Pontes France is providing capacity support to the National Committee Against Torture set up by the Attorney General of the Federation as one of its commitments to torture prevention in the country. So here we are supporting this committee, as well as 7 in the committee, to be able to do their work in terms of torture prevention in the country. But at the same time, we are calling on the government to ensure that there is implementation of the Anti-Torture Act.
I'm systematic, countrywide, and there's hardly, been any effort, by the government to really stamp that out of our criminal justice landscape. So that's why programs like this are important. The National Committee Against Torture is a key driver, or at least ought to be a key driver in the fight against torture and cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment. But over years that committee had been inert, has been a lot of people do know about it. It's been unable to function as it ought to function. So the Lawyers Without Borders and those who have supported them have done an incredibly great service to Nigeria in trying to build capacity within the National Committee Against Torture so that they can also on their part begin to do the work that they were created to do. Has been completely complicit, in the use of torture. Government has passed the Anti-Torture Act 2017, but there has been not one single prosecution under that act. So government, to a far extent, has been an enabler of the use of torture. And so being complicit in it, indulging it, acquiescing in it, makes it, a collaborator in it. But, what we expect government to do, I mean, some of you saw what has happened recently, where people's hands were tied behind their backs, they were on the road, cars were, a police van was used to run up against them. Those are things we should take with far, far, far more seriousness, far more, with a lot of, we should really, really be very, very outraged by that. But what do you get? You disband the people who did it. That is nothing. That is like encouraging others to do it because the consequences are so trifling. They are trifling to the extent that you could say there are no consequences to such actions. So we expect government to walk the talk.